Hey, and welcome to this week's edition of the Genius Zone. And this is where you will soak up the most empowering knowledge from some of the greatest people that share their gold nuggets. And if you are ready to embrace the power of your body, the power of your life, if you are ready to be an overcomer and understand that all things are possible, if you love Louise Hay, if you believe that miracles can happen, then I am about to bring on a woman. Not only is she an authority because of the tremendous work that she has done through her hands, through her voice, and through her own experience, but this woman herself has healed herself of trauma that can often lose faith in your relationships, in the way that you relate to people. She's going to really blow that open so that you can learn about it. She's also healed herself of fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, epilepsy, just to name a few. And this is a woman who has lived through the miracle of rewiring the brain and being able to turn your fear into your incredible empowerment and your greatest life. So let's get ready to heal the root cause of what's going on in your life, in your relationships, in your health, in your freedom, and let's talk all powerful things that are going to be on a supernatural plane. And with no further ado, I give you the beautiful Cari. And how are you, Cari? And I'll just get you to state your name so it is said exactly how it's supposed to sound.
Oh, thank you, Terri. So it's Cari Rickabaugh, and I am doing wonderful. I am so excited to be here and grateful to share the space with you.
Well, you are not alone on that, because so am I. Because, every time I experience a beautiful, authentic coach, healer, leader like yourself, not only do I get that little bit of healing for myself, but it is serving the mission to transform millions of people in the world. So thank you. So I understand you have a lot of gratitude for a coach who held you and was able to take you through some of the most traumatic things that you had experienced, even from as young as diapers. So perhaps you can begin by sharing some of your story, and we're just going to let the viewers know that a lot of Cari's experience, there could be a trigger warning. There's also a very close association with Louise Hay, so if you love Louise Hay, you're going to really enjoy this. So just get ready for it, and I do give a trigger warning, but the good news is that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So, we don't realize that our lives today are a product of where we've come from, in our relationships, in the way that we hold pain. Perhaps just give us an overview of how it started from abuse from a person that you are supposed to trust, and move through to some horrific, obviously, experiences that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, for me, it started when I was in diapers. It was before I could even remember. I was sexually molested on a regular basis by my father. And this had been happening so long and so regularly, I didn't know it wasn't normal. I didn't know that this wasn't love. I didn't know that not all fathers did this. And I knew it was something that I dreaded. But I knew it was also something that just had to happen, was my belief. And so it was just normal for me. And at 7 years old, an experience happened where somebody else in my family walked in on a friend and I, thought that we were doing something that we were not doing, knew, or at least thought that something else was going on with my father, that he may be doing this to me. And so they pulled me aside and said, "Is this happening?" And I said, "Yeah." And coming from a very, very religious family, God was very prominent in our family. Righteousness, obedience, all of these things were very prominent. And so they then convinced me that because I was letting this happen, not that it was my fault, but because I wasn't stopping it, that God didn't love me and that I wasn't worthy of his love and of his blessings and any of that. And at that time, in that moment, they made me kneel down and pray and repent for being unworthy because I was letting this happen. And then it was never spoken of again. I was sent back to my room to play with my friend, and there was no playing. I remember just running and laying in my bed, cried myself to sleep, and just kept thinking, we keep getting taught in church that God loves everybody, all the sinners, all the murderers, all the rapists, all the horrible people. And I'm a 7-year-old little girl and he doesn't love me.
Whoa.
And there was something, it was massive. I didn't realize at the time, but there was something in me that broke.
Yeah.
But I had to keep being the victim because submission was demanded. We lived in a household where physical, mental, emotional abuse happened all the time as well. We were under very controlling parents. We could not speak unless spoken to. We could not ask questions. We could not pursue anything that we had interest in unless it was approved by our parents. And so I just kept going through the motions every day. And every time it happened, I just believed that I was a worse and worse and worse person, that I had no worth, that all my worth was gone because I couldn't stop this from happening.
This is just so, common. And one thing that does happen to all of us, and maybe you can teach around this, is that we store these emotions in our body and then it manifests. It comes out because the body keeps the score. And as you said, it became your normal. So you thought it was actually normal to be going through this, but here's you living out this belief system, and this is exactly what you are now doing for people today. So you are helping them to develop the courage to hold them as you've been held, as Louise Hay had her own very, very similar experience, and then show them how through the many modalities and the power of the mind, you can actually heal yourself and heal others, which is such a beautiful gift. Now, your journey started out where you were obviously 23 years doing massage, but this is not just any kind of massage, because you were also blending this with energy work. And maybe you can just talk us through this and how this energy work and this style of massage is so powerful.
Sure, absolutely. So there was something in me that I've always known that I wanted to help people in some way, shape, or form. And somebody mentioned to me at 18, why don't you go into massage therapy? You know, I was the person that would run around and just like rub everybody's shoulders when we were in groups. And they're like, you're really good. And it clicked. And I'm like, okay. And of course, we all have this idea of what massage therapy is, which I call a fluff and buff, where you just lay down and it's very relaxing, and there's music playing and you might fall asleep. And if you have sore muscles, you feel good for a day or two. And very quickly, when I went into massage therapy school, that didn't appeal to me. And throughout the years, I've been trained on 42 different modalities under the umbrella of massage therapy / energy work. And very quickly, what did resonate with me was this more of a rehabilitative sports kind of, there's a problem. We know there's a problem, and let's figure out what that problem is versus how the body's manifesting. So what is the problem versus the symptoms? Because they don't always line up. Actually, rarely do they line up. So somebody can have hip pain and doctors are trying to treat the hip and there's nothing wrong with the hip. It's actually because they have a knee issue and their body is out of line and they're compensating, and it's just manifesting in the hip. And a lot of that can be found. A lot of it can be worked with energy work along with massage. And so that is what I was very drawn to. And it was more about helping people figure out a long-term solution so they could function better and function differently, instead of just helping them feel better for a day or two. Basically putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. And that is what I've been doing for 23 years. I've worked with chiropractors and professional athletes and clinics and all of these things, working with people. And so it's all about getting to the root, getting to the core and healing that versus treating something else that the body's just saying, oh, this is where it's going to show.
This is very, very unique work, I would like to say. And obviously, if you happen to live in the same town as Cari, and whereabouts are you?
I'm actually in Wisconsin, just outside of Milwaukee. Yeah.
Okay. The fact is that Cari works with people so that she can help you to heal yourself, so that if you are in a different city, like myself, I'm in Perth, Western Australia, you will still be able to get the benefits of all of this. If you happen to be in the same city as Cari, you don't want to miss this. I know that energetics is what we call it in my world. And so we believe that trapped energy in the body needs to be pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
And we discover that and we pull it out and we change it, we recode it, we rewire it, and then we install, what that person needs. So what did you discover that inner child needed? I mean, you were completely violated by a man that is supposed to be the one man that you look up to and that you can trust. And I can only imagine how that did impact your relationships as well. And I think you were talking to me backstage about how you used to put those barriers and walls up, with anyone that was getting close. Because the problem is that the subconscious mind doesn't differentiate in time. So all it's doing is protecting from, getting hurt again. So perhaps you can, share how that impacted you, because I know there's going to be listeners out there, and this is going to fall into the hands of people that need to hear this and need to know that they do not have to put up with this anymore, and through your experience. So can you share how that kind of came out in your life and how it impacted you?
Of course. One thing that I do want to step back for just a moment and say, at age 10, I actually had spoken out and had gone to somebody else in my family and said, this is happening to me. And I was basically told, just forget about it. And they walked out the door. And so at that time, I lived in the kind of household that you do what you're told. And so I forced myself to forget that happened. I shoved it so far down inside of me that I was constantly triggered throughout the rest of my life. But I didn't know that's what was happening. I didn't know why I would react certain ways. I couldn't, there were certain ways that I was being that I didn't want to be, that I didn't ever feel I could change. And at the same time, there was this massive belief, just, I don't even know if it was mental, it was more emotional, of I am so broken. I am just not a whole person. I am not okay. God doesn't love me. And I didn't know where it came from because I had forgotten everything to do with all of that abuse. So when it came to friendships or relationships or pretty much anything having to do with other people, especially with men, it was always so terrifying to me that if they decided to show me any sort of attention, I would suddenly push them away. And sometimes it was physical, sometimes it was verbal. And sometimes I would call them up and just say, hey, I give you permission to walk away from me because I know I'm not worth this. And I'm not, I would self-sabotage all the time. And then I would step back and be so hurt and wonder why I couldn't be in a relationship and why nobody wanted to fight for me and why I couldn't ever make things work or what to change or how to change it.
Yeah.
And so
I note that you, because you work with people that are also having very, very difficult problems connecting with their significant other, finding their soulmate or knowing that person. I just want to say and echo Cari's message here, and that is that you are not broken. And if you are not connecting on the level with yourself that you know that you truly desire, there is a reason. Anything that you desire desires you. And this is where, by coming into Cari's portal, whether that be to go in face to face or to connect with her, what is going to happen is Cari is going to be able to take you through coaching questions that are not just normal coaching questions, but we're going to open that up also in a moment and walk through the process of how you can heal your life. And I'm sounding like Louise Hay as I echo this. So you are obviously suffering from so much, Cari, and yet how did your life change once you did heal yourself on that cellular level? What happened for you? What were you noticing? Like all of a sudden your normal becomes a new normal that probably would have felt like it was abnormal once upon a time, but it becomes your next level. So can you talk us through that?
Of course. So I had developed a lot of immune issues. I had developed chronic issues. I had developed, like you stated at the beginning, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, epilepsy. They couldn't ever find a reason why I started having seizures. I started having them at 20. No history of this, no family history. No, they did all the tests and couldn't find anything. And it was just very, very strange. Then at 24, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And then it was 29, I believe, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue. And my life got to a point after so many years because I was still carrying all of this unknown trauma, a decade of trauma that I wasn't aware of, plus still going through some trauma at the same time, that it wore my body down to the point where I could go from my office to my bed, and that was just about it every day. I actually had to give up my massage practice for about 6 years because I physically couldn't function. And it just was this, and I was only in my early 30s. And I was just like, how am I going to live the rest of my life like this? And I was single because I had all these issues with creating relationships. And I'm like, this is just not any sort of life. And how long can I do this for? And there were all of these beliefs that then were created because of that. So I had these beliefs that didn't serve me, that were actually hurting me and creating walls, which caused me to take on new beliefs. And so it just kind of piled on itself and was very, very difficult.
Accumulation, that's what happens, and it's a slow death of your ability to feel what is rightfully belonging to you. And that's why I want to emphasize to everyone, it doesn't matter what you're going through, what you've been through. Today can be the first day for the rest of your life. Sometimes just understanding that everything that has happened to you has happened for a purpose. And obviously, Cari, that's the mission of this show, the Genius Zone. So now you are the authority on this. So let's take a look at what that looks like when you are helping a person to really come into, understanding where everything is coming from, so they can be set free to be living the life of love and health and freedom. So what does it look like? Let's just say I am coming to you, I'm your client, and I'm saying, well, at the moment, I am feeling almost as if I have a kind of a situation where people may mistake kindness for weakness. Now, I understand where you've come from, and I absolutely 100%, thank God, I had a beautiful father. So that was extremely important, who really did, and still does nurture us. And so that trust was there. And I can only not even imagine what it would be like to be violated. But I feel that a lot of things that did happen to me during my younger years happened because maybe my kindness, my niceness, and I think I did have that, I've got to be this person, this Pollyanna, because there was that element of, having that perfection attitude, as much as my parents come from, a very well-meaning everything. So you put on this Pollyanna front, and then as a result, people can mistake that for weakness. Mm-hmm. And that's where you can get steamrolled, and that's where you can get taken advantage of. And that's where I also believe that if people can turn their pain into their power and say, this is happening for a higher reason. So let's go into your higher reason, how you have helped rewire people's minds, bodies, and relationships. Can you tell me what that looks like and take me through that?
Sure. And I'd like to say this first. There are people that hear my story or read my story or see this podcast or hear me speak on stage, and they come up to me and they say, well, my trauma isn't as big as your trauma, or I didn't suffer like you did. So, and they think that invalidates them because their experiences are very different from what I've been through. And I just want to say, trauma is trauma. If you had a second grade teacher that was mean to you and said something to you and it shifted something inside, that's trauma. And so
it's funny you should say that, because that's exactly true for me. Only it was a grade 3 teacher, and that teacher impacted my life, and I'll never forget her. But yeah. So it's funny you should say that, actually, and bring that up. So what happens? So when obviously a person is coming into the journey with you, how do you move them through where they've been survival mode, and take them out of that and help them to stand in their power?
Sure. So the process for me begins with a conversation. And the conversations are just going to be, you talk to me. What do you want? what do you want to fix? Because there's nothing wrong with anybody, but we often feel like there's something wrong with us. And so it's, what do you want to change? Where do you feel like you're getting stuck? And it's just gathering information. And then after that, it's helping them to see the places they're getting stuck that they don't realize they're getting stuck. So much of that is breaking down societal norms, beliefs, or truths that we take on that aren't necessarily true. But because society says this is how we're supposed to be, or this is how we should think, or whatever, we believe that's true. So we function in a way and we're not even conscious of that. So it's holding up a mirror, basically, and saying, what is this doing for you? How is this serving you? Is there something we could do different? Is there a way that this is affecting you? And a lot of times it's very quickly, I can help people go right into their bodies, like Louise Hay teaches, is what is going on inside of you? And I know when my coach, the very first coach I ever worked with, he would say, what are you feeling? And I would say, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling, and he goes, those are thoughts. And I'm like, no, that's how I feel. And he goes, no, that's what you're thinking. What's happening inside? Are you feeling something? Where are you feeling it? What does it look like? Is it moving? Is it spiky? Is it growing? Is it, where is something happening inside of you? Let's tap into that and focus on that. And then what's coming up from that? Because so much of what we say is habitual. It's the same language that we've been taught and that we know. But if we can go inside and tap into what our organs are holding on to, what energy is holding on to, what our muscles are holding on to, then we can tap into the root. We can tap into the core. And a lot of times the things that we're experiencing are just these symptoms. And if I can give you an example, I have a client that I'm working with right now who started working with me because she reached out to me initially. She said, I've got this issue with money and I don't want to spend money. And I know it's a money issue. And we had a couple of conversations before we ever agreed to work together. And I'm like, I can help you. Because in these conversations, I could tell by asking questions, the issue wasn't about money. The issue was about stuff that had happened in her past that she was now projecting onto money, that money wasn't a good thing. Money wasn't appropriate. There was never going to be, enough money to be fulfilled. And as we've been working, we've been able to really go inward and shift this. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Where is this not enoughness coming from? And she's like, I had an experience at a camp when I was 12 years old. Okay. Start there. And she goes, I haven't thought about this in years. I know.
Amazing.
That's what our nervous system does. It's what our subconscious is, like you said, try and keep it safe. And so the more we work on her past and her trauma, even though she doesn't see it as trauma, she's starting to, the more we step back into, hey, how are you feeling about money? If I say all these things that triggered you before, they're not as triggering anymore because the core beliefs are no longer there, or they're being worked on, they're being processed, they're being addressed. I mean, feelings are there to be felt. They just want to be felt. And we tend to push them down and we don't want to feel them. But if we can allow these things that are scary, that are difficult, that are, even painful to be felt, that's all they want.
It's trying to heal it, isn't it? It's really acknowledging that it is okay to be feeling those feelings, and connecting with the memories, because I believe people don't realize that what is actually coming up for them is really a memory of the past. And with that, I mean, what happened to you? Because obviously this is where it is manifesting in pain of the body, pain of the mind, pain of the life. So you healed some pretty big stuff in yourself. Can you walk me a little bit through that process, if that's okay, just to add that value to our listeners? Like, what did that look like? So, for example, did you have an experience particularly with, say, fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, and, or even epilepsy, that you would like to kind of specifically go into what that process was when you released it and helped yourself heal?
I love that question. Thank you. It wasn't quite that where I mentally said, here's this ailment that I have, I want to release that. What happened was, for the first probably 5 or 6 months that my coach and I were working together, just working on trauma memories, trauma experiences, the ones that I did remember, I noticed after a while that there was, with epilepsy, I've been on medication for decades, but even if you're on medication, lack of sleep or stress can cause seizures to still happen anyway. And I remember on a day, probably 3 or 4 months, like I said, working with him, I was so upset about something. I was really stressed, and I just kept thinking, I've got to calm down. I've got to calm down. I'm going to have a seizure. And I wasn't able to calm myself down enough, and I didn't have a seizure. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I just kind of, wrote it down and put it to the side and just kept going on with life. And then probably about a month later, there was something else where I was doing all of this work and all this new creations and projects and stuff. And I was so exhausted, and I'm like, I've got to get some sleep or else I'm going to have a seizure. The seizure never happened.
Oh, wow.
And so I went back and I looked, and I was looking at what I had written before about, I was really surprised about this. And then I started thinking about the fibromyalgia, and I'm like, I haven't had a flare up in a little while. And that's when I really started realizing the chronic fatigue and all the other chronic illnesses that I had. And I'm like, wait a second. The time where I could go from my office to my bedroom and that was it, I'm now starting to cold plunge. I'm now starting to rebound. I'm now started running, which I've never wanted to do. And I still don't do it well, and it's okay. But I do it more than I ever have before in my life. And I'm like, I couldn't walk before. How am I going into this freezing cold lake every day? How am I running through these trails every day? And I realized that all of these ailments just started fading away. And the more that we did them, and it wasn't a complete getting rid of them, it was a gradual thing. And I still have flare-ups occasionally, but I think this year I've had maybe 2 flare-ups of fibromyalgia that have lasted maybe a day or 2, whereas before that would be the norm of when I didn't have a flare-up. And so chronic fatigue, I can think of maybe 2 or 3 times this year, and they last about a day. It's just
absolutely ironic. That is so ironic. And so do you believe, Louise Hay cured herself or healed herself of cancer. And, a lot of people would understand that, because she had a very similar story to yours. And, the Deepak Chopra says it very well, and that is that the cells of our body are eavesdropping on our thoughts. So we are in automatic. Our thoughts are an automatic system. We don't wake up in the morning and go, you know what? Today I'm going to think about all the best times that I've ever felt so energized, so happy, so excited, so uplifted. Unfortunately, we don't do that stuff. We actually, our brain is wired to look for the rubbish. And we could hear 3 people saying to us something amazing, and then one person comes up and annihilates us. and we focus on that one thing there. So our brain is wired to do that. And obviously, Louise Hay did the same thing. She healed the cells of her body. And that happened at the cellular level of her thinking, where she transmuted it. So do you think there is, at a deeper level, some sort of, like, I know I do a lot of forgiveness work with what I'm doing. What do you feel that are some of the keys? Is it more around the acceptance? Is it forgiveness? Is it acknowledgement? Is it all of the above? Can you walk us through that a little?
Yeah, it's the answer to that is yes. It is all of it. It's all part of it. If we go into a little bit more scientific mode, there's neural pathways in the brain. Science has proven this, that when a thought is created, it goes down a pathway that's already created, that we've created throughout our lifetime. And so when it comes to what do we look for? We look for the negative things. There's a neural pathway that is just going back and forth saying, hey, we found it. Let's hold on to that one. That's what we want to hold on to. And so a lot of this is changing that and catching that. And you can actually create new neural pathways in your brain. And so the acknowledgement of these events, the acceptance of things that were done to you or things that you may have done that you're still holding on to, the forgiveness, the actual process and letting go of stuff, all of these things, step by step, will help create new neural pathways. Because as your brain catches something, you get to, what I have a friend that calls it catch and release. So you get to say, oh, there's something negative. I'm going to catch on to that, because you're not responsible for your first thought. That's a reaction, but you're responsible for your second thought. So right. I catch that and I say, hey, that's negative. I want to think about it. And then you get to say, I'm going to catch this and release that. I don't need to think about that. I don't need to hold on to that, or choose to think of something else, or choose to let that go, or whatever. There's a million different things that we can do with that, but it's just stopping it. And there's so many different processes as well. I went through 3 different therapists that couldn't help me because it was talk therapy, and talk therapy didn't work for my brain. It works for a lot of people. Coaches do a lot of different techniques, and I call it playing with my clients. And let's try this and see if this helps you. Maybe this will help you more. And they get to tell me, they get to determine it. They get to decide, this is what I want to do. Let's keep going down this road, because that helped me to catch and release these things the best, the fastest, the easiest, whatever it is for them. And so there's a million different processes. It's not cut and dry for everyone, but there is something for everyone. There's not a person out there there's not going to be something that we can find to help them start to create these new neural pathways and start functioning, start thinking differently, and to start breaking down the walls that are in front of them.
Amazing. That is so powerful. And, as Louise Hay said it very nicely, you can heal your life. And as Cari is here to tell you, you can rewire your life. You can live the life of love. You can live your life of your health and freedom. You are in control. And what we're going to do is we're going to put Cari's contact details in the show notes so that you can contact this lady. And if you love Louise Hay's work, you are going to love what this beautiful lady can do for you. And, the show just wouldn't be the show without this question, because quite often people will get off and go, oh, I wished I had said this or that. But maybe there's something you want to reiterate, or something else you'd like to share. But, if you had something that person out there, they're actually praying to hear your message right now when they hear it, and this is exactly the divine time, what would you want to say to them?
Do it scared. do it scared. This work, stepping into it, is terrifying. Changing your life because we like what is familiar, even if it's painful, even if it's depressing, we like what's familiar. It's going to be scary to step into something new. Do it scared, do it tired, do it anxious, but just step forward. I used to tell people, I used to hate it when people would say, if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? And I would always think they had a family that was supportive. They had money. They had other resources. That doesn't apply to me. From where I came from, if I can get through what I've gotten through and I can change and get to the other side of all that trauma and create a life that I never believed that I would have, anybody can do it. And there are people out there that will help you. There's communities, there's tribes that you can find that people will hold you and they will love you unconditionally. And they will help you get over that mountain so you can see that glorious life and to have that belief in yourself that you are, that's on the other side. So whatever you want to do, whatever you want to step into, do it, and do it scared.
I love that. And if they do it scared and they face their fear and do it anyway, what will they expect?
Oh, it's unimaginable. I mean, everything that they dream and they want to do is completely possible. And there is so much more. I am doing things still to this day that a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have never imagined I could have accomplished. Ever. Never imagined. Because there's this freedom there now. There's a freedom because those walls are knocked down, because I know that I am not broken. I know that I'm not worthless. I know that I'm lovable. All things that I couldn't believe that I thought were true for over 45 years. And now that I know that, it just opens up the world. It opens up the world. And everything that I was carrying inside of me, every event, every negative look that somebody gave me, every insult, none of those matter. I didn't have to hold them. I didn't have to believe any of them. I get to believe whatever I want to believe about anything in this world, and not in an egotistical, defensive way, but I truly get to believe in myself as a miracle. I get to believe in these clients that I work with who are trying so hard to just get through whatever's in front of them, and they just don't know how. And it is such a joy for me to be able to hold space for them and say, let me help you, because I know what that's like. I will tell people every detail of my story to give them permission to have that space where they know they are not going to be judged. Because whatever you've been through, I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, Cari, we're going to have all your details in the show notes. I just want to say from the very bottom of my heart, thank you for being so transparent, so generous, so kind, and not just being an incredibly gifted woman, but an authentic, transparent, and an empowered woman of authority in this topic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Terri. Thank you for this space. I appreciate that.